Excellent. All right. Welcome everybody to our first Fireside by the Riverside via Zoom technology. We've got over 50 participants from kind of all over the world. We've got some friends from Spain and Switzerland, even Japan, Australia, New Zealand are all on the call. And so look forward to have a good discussion with everybody. Again, this will be recorded and beamed out into the world later. So, but only the presentation portion, and we'll have discussion at the end of the presentation. So, thank you all so much for joining. We're going to start with a little bit of a special song, and then we'll get underway with the program.
I'm gonna lay down my burden down by the riverside, down by that river, down by that riverside. Gonna lay down my burden down by that riverside. Study war no more. I ain't gonna study war no more. Study war no more. Study war no more. No more. I ain't gonna study war no more. Study war no more. Study war no more. Lay down my sword and shield down by the riverside. Down by the riverside. Down by the riverside. I'm lay down my sword and shield down by the riverside. Study war no more. I ain't gonna study war no more. Study war no more. Study war no more. No more. I ain't gonna study war no more. Study war no more. Study war no more.
Nako di kami barangay, namaboko na Yesu, namaboko na Yesu, namaboko na Yesu. Nako di kami barangay, namaboko na Yesu, namikuisa Yesu, Yesu. Study war no more, 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 study war no more.
I'm gonna put on my long white robe by the riverside, down by the riverside, down by the riverside. I'm gonna put on my long white robe down by the riverside. Study war no more.
Study war no more, 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 study war no more.
All right. Get things started with a little bit of a upbeat there. Beautiful Grandpa Elliott doing his thing down by the riverside. So welcome. You're all down by the riverside now. you've laid your burdens down, and let's have a little chat. But before we get into the program, I want to do a little check-in with you guys first, see how everybody's doing and who everybody is on the call. And so this is where if you can get on your chats, why don't you just introduce yourselves on the chat to everybody. Tell us who you are and where you're from. Just start typing in there, type away. And also if you can type in there not only where you're from and where you are now, but maybe put in one word for how you're feeling today. If you could sum it all up in one word, what would it be? How are you feeling? It's a crazy time in the world. Daniel's needing some river energy. And Sonia's feeling grateful, which is wonderful. Some people are feeling uplifted. Hey, Sean, good to see you, brother. Haven't seen each other in a long time. Wonderful. People from Switzerland, from Auckland, and of course all over New Zealand. Everybody's feeling, some people feeling connected, feeling blessed, feeling full of flow and swag. Oh man, that's great. We got a big crowd. And feeling good. Oh, I just heard a hoot coming from the other room there, and that's my whānau doing their thing. Joyous, calm and happy. Wonderful. Excellent. Well, it's a crazy time. It's just good to check in with how everyone is doing. So the next question is a polling question. So I'm going to submit a poll here, and you guys get to answer, and then I'll share the results of the poll. It'll be anonymous, but if you had to put your feeling of your level of well-being at the moment, given the crazy times we're in at the time, on a scale of 1 to 10, I'll let you enter that now. So I'm launching the polling now. You should be able to see a poll come there. So just type in what you think. People are seeing some submissions in now. 1 is really low. 10 is kind of off the charts. Fantastic. Well, still on the charts. It's not off the charts yet, but it's up there. And you say what you think. It's anonymous. And I'll share the results. We got about 23 folks in there already. So if you have a ability to put in your answer, and I'll share the results. So about half the folks have put in their answer. I'll give it just another little bit. Oh, okay. So my group has put in the number pi as how they're feeling. Just for the record, there is 1 submission of pi. I'm not sure if that was actually an option, but pi sounds yummy to people. Good. All right, I'm going to submit the poll now. Here are the results. And I'm going to share the results. And now you can see. So this is a pretty good feeling crowd right now. Everybody's feeling, I don't know, I probably should have done it before that intro song and do it after, because that certainly, it lifted me up listening to that, listening to old Grandpa Elliott. But there's some, well, the well-being's a little bit lower, and that's totally understandable of the time we're in right now. And so maybe in the course of the talk, we can talk about that and try to put things a little bit in perspective, because it's a crazy time for the world at the moment. Very good. So let's keep going. So for some people who are on the call, they might not be that familiar with the Baha'i Faith, because this is a fireside where we're going to talk about some of the ideas and principles in the Baha'i Faith. So maybe before we get into the talk, it would be helpful just to have a brief introduction. And so for that, I'm going to call on my boys to explain that to everybody. Boys, are you there?
No. Present.
Present. Excellent.
Wow. Okay.
All right, over to you guys. So what is this Baha'i Faith thing?
Stop sharing your screen, man. All right. Okay, so I will be starting us off with a brief introduction to the faith, like a few facts. So, the Baha'i Faith was founded in Persia, or now it's known as Iran, in 1844. And currently it has 7 million followers, widespread throughout the entire world, 200 countries and 100,000 localities. So that's about all they trusted me with. So I will now hand it over to Alexander for further information.
Yeah. The prophet founder of the Baha'i Faith is called Baha'u'llah. He's one who brought spiritual teachings about the oneness of humanity, the unity of all religions, and world peace. He was a spiritual teacher in Iran, and yeah, that's about some of the teachings.
Man, I sure would love to tell you about some of the teachings. So, some of the key elements of the teachings, like Alexander mentioned, are the oneness of God, the oneness of religion, and the oneness of humanity, which all sound very nice. And some of the implications of that are the oneness of God is of course, the mystical element, in a sense, talking about the essence of God and our relationship to that unknowable essence. So teachings are given to us to pray and to meditate and to adorn our characters with divine attributes like kindness and generosity, integrity, truthfulness, and so on. But the faith also has some practical teachings and some things that bring us back down to reality, to the material world, and talking about, not to reality, but the material world. Okay. Advocating for international unity, world peace, eliminating extremes of wealth and poverty, realizing social justice, and sorry, the equality of men and women, of course. Thank you. And harmony of science and religion. And Baha'is also believe in the independent investigation of the truth and encourages everybody to question dogma and tradition and embark on a personal quest after truth. And yeah, if you want to learn more, keep coming to our Riverside, Fireside chats.
All right, thank you guys. Those are my reporters on location in the other room in the house, giving us that breakdown. The cool introduction, thanks guys. So now with that as kind of a background, I'm just going to go back to our little slides here and get into the topic for this evening. I've called it Amity amidst Calamity, or also known as the subtitle, let's not let a good crisis go to waste. So this is a crazy time that the world is in at the moment. Massive dislocation, and the whole world is feeling it to different degrees, but it's not quite unprecedented, but it feels near unprecedented for this generation at least. So we're just going to get into that and try to make some sense. You know, is there anything positive that could come out of all of this? And we'll go through some of the things in the writings which look at this. And the first thing is there's a lot in the writings that talk about tests and difficulties, and of course it's very natural when we encounter difficulties and hardships to be sort of scared by them, or even to be angry and upset by them. But why do these things happen, and is there any sense that could be made out of all that? And this is a beautiful quote from the Baha'i writings. This comes from some of the tablets of Abdu'l-Baha, who was the son of the founder of the faith, Baha'u'llah, that was mentioned earlier. So here the quote is, "When the winds blow severely, rains fall fiercely, the lightning flashes, the thunder roars, the bolt descends, and storms of trial become severe. Grieve not, for after this storm, verily the divine spring will arrive. The hills and fields will become verdant. The expanses of grain will joyfully wave. The earth will become covered with blossoms. The trees will be clothed with green garments and adorned with blossoms and fruits." So I guess what it's hinting at is that that tests and difficulties actually can also be a source of progress. So kind of no pain, no gain. And certainly what we're confronted with right now with this COVID crisis is enormous. This is certainly the largest shock. So on the one hand, there's the health crisis, the health portion of that, where people's very lives are at risk, and so there's on that level. The other level is the economic devastation and the side effects that'll come, that are already starting to be seen. So certainly this will be the largest shock to the global economy since the 2008 global financial crisis, and maybe even the largest economic shock since the Great Depression of the 1930s. And the shocks are just multiple. They're reinforcing. Businesses closed, travel bans, tourism, entire sectors of the economy disrupted and shut down, unemployment, bankruptcies. All of those sorts of ripple effects from this crisis are just now starting to be seen, and no doubt will have a huge impact. And you can just see as well, on top of that, the nature of this crisis, the burden on the healthcare systems, which is just amplifying the impact of the disease itself. And in many cases, tragically, physicians are being forced to make literally life or death decisions in triage circumstances to decide who lives and who dies. And if you look back at the example of what was referred to, incorrectly referred to, by the way, as the Spanish flu in 1918, 1919, we can also expect that the impact will not be evenly spread around the world. And back then, the impact was also uneven. So 100 years ago, the U.S. suffered 675,000 deaths over over the 3 waves that came through in the Spanish flu, which amounted to about 0.65% of the US population. But other parts of the world were hit even harder. India, 17 million people died in the flu. That's over 100 years ago, which at that time was 5.5% of the population. And what we can expect is that as hard as we're being hit in developed part of the world, the developing countries generally are more vulnerable in pandemics, and the economic consequences are even more dire. But at the same time, as awful as all that is, there's also opportunity that emerges in big crises. If we look back, look at the disruption and the crisis of World War I. In the aftermath of World War I, the world came together, and for the first time in human history, saw the need to put together a League of Nations. Right, this was the first attempt in human history where nations came together, and it came out of that directly as a consequence of that immense suffering that came from that. After the devastation of World War II, and which came, of course, out of the imperfections of that first step, the United Nations was formed, and of course that brought substantial step forward. But we can also see the limitations of that. The world also made huge progress as a result of the Spanish flu to collaborate and work harder on stamping out other sort of diseases. So polio, smallpox, huge progress was made, and it was made only because the globe could see that it was necessary for people to cooperate on an unprecedented level in order to have an impact there. So there you can see, when we look back in the past, that we can take some comfort that sometimes directly because of a huge difficulty, that it led directly to leaps of progress being made. And so we can take some comfort out of that. But, yes, they say no pain, no gain, but this quote also tells you that it's not automatically a gain, right? If I just read this one, the souls who bear the tests of God become the manifestations of great bounties, for the divine trials cause some souls to become entirely lifeless, while they cause the holy souls to ascend to the highest degree of love and solidity. They cause progress, and they also cause retrogression. So what that kind of says to me is that it's not that we automatically are going to make progress from every test and difficulty, but it depends on how we respond to those tests and difficulties, right? And that I think we can think of examples in our own lives where that's probably has been the case, right? And so the question for us now, as the world is confronted with this most recent calamity, if you will, is what will we choose? We have to choose whether we're going to make progress out of this or if we're going to actually regress and go backwards as a result of that. So that's what I want to focus on. So we'll have to make a choice. So the question for us is, what choices could lead to progress as a consequence of this calamity? But equally, what choices could lead to retrogression, to going backwards? And before we discuss that, and I'll ask you guys for your participation in that, but before we get to that, there are some hints elsewhere in the Baha'i writings that give us some clue about what would give us progress and what would not. So the first one is this passage. So some clues from this one. This is again from Abdu'l-Baha's selection from his writings. Consider how the cause of the welfare, happiness, joy, and comfort of humankind are amity and union, whereas dissension and discord are most conducive to hardship, humiliation, agitation, and failure. All right, so that's already giving us some clue that the more that we go in the direction of amity and union and working together, the more likely that's going to lead to some sort of prosperity and step forward. And of course, the more disunity and discord there is, the more that leads to difficulty and hardship. So that's a clue. This next one is from the Hidden Words of Baha'u'llah. And it gives us another hint here as well. So this one is basically talking about how we're all one, how we're all equal, and how we're all children of God. Know ye not why we created you all from the same dust? The picture some stardust there for you. That no one should exalt himself over the other. Ponder at all times in your hearts how you were created. Since we have created you all from one same substance, it is incumbent on you to be even as one soul, to walk with the same feet, eat with the same mouth, and dwell in the same land. That from your inmost being, by your deeds and actions, the signs of oneness and the essence of detachment may be made manifest. All right, so we're equal, we're children of God, we're one family, effectively, is what he's telling us here. So that's got to be an aspect of this as well, of that reality. And then there's this one, which is another hidden word that Baha'u'llah revealed. O son of spirit, noble have I created thee, yet thou hast abased thyself. Rise then unto that for which thou wast created. All right, so we're not just dust. There is a dust part of us, which is the material selves. But what this is hinting at is that we also have a higher self. We're spiritual beings, right? We're souls that happen to have bodies. We're not bodies with souls. But we have these two aspects to ourselves. And part of the spiritual journey is, and part of the free will and choice that we have to make as we go through life and have these experiences is learning how to choose the higher self over the lower self and live up to that nobility that we've been built with. And then last hint before we get into some of the discussion here is that the well-being of mankind, its peace and security are unattainable unless and until its unity is firmly established. So when we just look back over the thousands of years of human civilization, as much as it feels like sometimes we take 2 steps backwards, I think the reality is we have made progress. And this is a special age that we're living in. We have the privilege of living in. This is a period where humanity is coming of age. And what we've got to learn to do, it's the first time that we've had to really do this on such a scale. We're learning, how do we build a better world? What does a better world look like? What does a truly global civilization actually look like? And how do we build that? Because we're not going to do it because it's a nice idea to do. We're going to do it because it's necessity. And this COVID disaster is an example of exactly why we need a new level of unity for ourselves. So those are a few hints. Now, I think those kind of actions, those choices, will have to be made on different levels as well, right? So there are going to be choices that we have to make at the global level, at the national, global, regional, national levels. So, and I guess the reality for us here on the call is we probably don't have that much influence over that, right? I mean, I think we can read about it, we can watch it, we can vote, we can participate, and we can encourage, and of course we're a part of that. But there are things that have to be done on those levels. The other level is closer to us and closer to what we can influence, and it's the local, our community, neighborhood level. What choices do we make that we can directly influence? And then maybe even also just as importantly is at the individual level, for us individually as ourselves, what choices do we make? How do we react to a test and difficulty in this particular one? So so we're going to, here I'd like you to just through the chat to just throw out some of your ideas, whether they're global, national level, or at local individual levels. What are some of the ways that some of the choices that could be made at any of those levels? Just throw them out there, and then we'll see what everybody's thinking, and then I'll share some thoughts from that. What are some ideas? What are some of those choices that could lead to retrogression first, and then we'll talk about progress? But what could make us go backwards in response to this calamity? And unfortunately, we probably already see some examples of it, right? Yes, nationalism, prejudice, and racism. We're sort of, you can see some of that reaction of wanting to go back to just ourselves, and we're afraid of there's even anti-Asian rhetoric. Our family experienced, unfortunately, that directly ourselves as we were going, just as this was unfolding. Working with friends on an individual level to limit one's negativity. Yeah, materialism is exactly. So people are immediately worried only about the material impacts. The rise of populism, jealousy, blaming people instead of looking for solutions, disobedience, absolutely. Which just, so we have the lockdown here in New Zealand. So you see people flouting that and not obeying, which of course is very selfish kind of behavior. Yeah, absolutely. Choosing fear over love and acceptance, getting paralyzed in that fear, that we're somehow stuck in our own bubbles. Yeah, there's conspiracy theories all over the place, right? Which just shows this breakdown of trust that is part of the symptom of the sicknesses around the world, that even the sickness beyond the virus itself, right? Yeah, just a lack of unity, a lack of detachment and courage. So yeah, all some really good thoughts there. So I'm just going to throw some out there. I think those are really well covered. These were some that I could think of. You can certainly see some of that reaction at the global national level of different countries blaming each other for the problem, getting it all into the blame game rather than getting on with solving things. Protectionism, nationalism, not wanting to think about the future, but just very short-sighted. Misallocation of resources. I'll give you an example of that. The World Health Organization, the WHO, on average in 2018, 2019, had about just a little under $500 million of funding for the World Health Organization, which is tasked with, with dealing with these sorts of things. And just to put that in some perspective, I know it sounds like a lot of money on one level, but to put that in perspective, 500 million is the equivalent of 3 or 4 fighter jets, right? Of lethal fighter jets that are in the arsenals of some of the world's largest militaries. And of course, we know there are thousands of those jets. So, that's just a reflection of what are our priorities at the global and national level. Is it in building fighter jets, or is it in building up institutions which can help deal with things like pandemics and preventing disease? The extremes of wealth and poverty, the inequality, even sort of reactions against that, and this is not only at the global, national level, but at local, individual level, ignoring science and data, selfish behavior, prejudice, all those things, this kind of paranoia, and maybe even a giving up and apathy, right? Those are choices of how we could react to this, right? So let's switch gears now. So those are, that would be the retrogression path. Let's talk about what are some choices that we could make that could lead to progress as a direct reaction to this particular test and calamity, right? So start throwing your ideas there now. What are things that we could do that could help us actually emerge out of this with better off, you know, as we've successfully done to some degree in the past. Yeah, so unity and solidarity, friendship, think about the greater good, have a service mindset, uniting together in order to solve some of these impacts, kindness on an individual level, absolutely, some caring for others, some empathy and sympathy, love and caring, looking out for the vulnerable, for the people who need help, the golden rule, absolutely, showing empathy and compassion. Washing your hands, yeah, that's a good handy tip. That would be a good way to lead towards progress. We could, so we can take effective action on the problem itself. Taking care, putting others first before ourselves, absolutely. So let's throw some others out there. I think these are all really good. You've already got all the answers there. You know, I think at the global national level, on one hand, it's just recognizing that, you know, we're all in this together. This is one ship that we're all in, like it or not, we just need to recognize that essential unity there. That's that we're all dependent on each other. Better cooperation, that we share expertise, scientists collaborating to find solutions, that there's more openness and transparency. Clearly, there's a need for having more trust in our institutions, and institutions behaving to earn that trust and preserve that trust, because when that's not there, you see the effects of it. The impacts of inequality, because the virus doesn't know, right? It doesn't know who's sick or who isn't. The Prime Minister of Ethiopia, who received the Nobel Peace Prize in 2019, wrote in an op-ed recently, he said that the current strategy of uncoordinated country-specific measures, while understandable, is myopic, right? It's short-sighted, it's unsustainable and potentially counterproductive. A virus that ignores borders cannot be tackled successfully like this. If the virus is not defeated in Africa, it will only bounce back to the rest of the world, right? So we're all connected, and it requires coordination to overcome these sorts of things. And of course, at the local individual level, being responsible, of course, taking care of ourselves. At first, you remember, like when you get in the airplane, in the safety instructions, they always tell you put the oxygen mask on yourself, right? So we have to take care of ourselves individually, and not in a selfish way, but with the intent of being able to put ourselves in a position so that we can be of service, right? And so we have to take care of ourselves, you know, mentally, physically, but also spiritually, that we're in a good mindset, not to be panicked and overcome by that fear and paralyzed by it, but that we get ourselves in a position that we can help, that we feel compassion and show compassion for others and find those ways to be of service, and that we show solidarity, right? Lots of pieces there. And you know, just sort of from a recent message from the Universal House of Justice, which is the governing body of the Baha'is of the world, this encouraging paragraph in their letter to everyone, I think kind of sums it up very nicely. So just to give us some perspective and some hope, however difficult matters are at present, and however close to the limits of their endurance some sections of societies are brought, humanity will ultimately pass through this ordeal, and it will emerge on the other side with greater insight and with a deeper appreciation of its inherent oneness and interdependence. So through those choices that we make, and I know sometimes it's, we can spend too much time worrying too much about what's going on globally and all of that, but we should be aware of that. But let's not be paralyzed by, there's things we can do on the individual side, on our own side, and also what we can do within our neighborhoods, within our communities that we're a part of, to respond positively to what's in it, and so that we emerge, so that we do emerge from all this on the other side with greater insight, with a deeper appreciation for that inherent oneness and interdependence. So let's all think about that, and we can discuss that later in the after the session. So I'd like to stop there and maybe end this section with one of my favorite prayers in the Baha'i prayers to refresh and gladden our spirits. And I'll just play. This has been put to music by our good friend Luke Slot, and I'd just like to share that with you. So if you guys could just enjoy this all together, we'll use this as a prayer.
Oh God, refresh and gladden my spirit, purify my heart and illumine my powers. Well, I lay all my affairs in thy hand, in thy hand, in thy hand. Thou art my guide and my refuge. Well, I will no longer be sorrowful and grieved. I will be a happy and joyful being. Oh God, refresh and gladden my spirit, purify my heart and illumine my powers. Well, I will no longer be full of anxiety. No, 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 will I let trouble harass me. I will not dwell on the unpleasant things of life. Oh God, oh God, oh God, thou art more friend to me than I am to myself, to myself. Well, thou art more friend to me than I am to myself, to myself. Well, thou art more friend to me than I am to myself, to myself. Well, thou art more friend to me than I am to myself, to myself.
Sometimes in our lives we all have pain, we all have sorrows. if I have pain, you need to borrow, for no one can feel those of your needs that you won't let you. You just call on me, brother, when you need a hand. We all need somebody to lean on. I just might have a problem that you'll understand. Hey, we all need somebody to lean on. Lean on me when you're not strong. I'll be your friend. I'll help you carry on. Oh, it won't be long. I'm gonna need somebody to lean on. You just call on me, brother, when you need a hand. We all need somebody to lean on. I just might have a problem that you'll understand. We all need somebody to lean on. If there is a load you have to bear that you can't carry, I'm right up the road. I'll share your load if you just call me. Come on, everybody. Call me. Hey, if you need a friend. Call me. Call me. Call me. Oh, baby, just call me. If you need a friend, all you got to do is, yeah, call me. All you got to do is, 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 all you got to call me. Come on now, call me. One more time now, call me. Yeah, we love you, Bill. We love you, Bill Rivers. Yes, sir.
Thank you, everybody. That's Bill Withers. Oh my goodness, what a beautiful man. And that lean on me, that's what we're doing together now, right? We're leaning on each other. And
Yep.
it's so nice to be all together.
Yep.
Oh,
Oh, what happened?
no, that's okay. I've got to turn this off.
Right. Right.
All good. There we go. Yeah, no, we're all leaning on each other now.
Yeah.
And it's so nice to be together. People from all over the world. Maybe that's one of the nice things out of all this stuff. We might not have done this otherwise. And so that's quite special to be able to do that. So yeah, that ends that part of the program, but maybe it's just unmute folks. So if you have any comments or anybody wants to share any impressions or just reactions and thoughts. Sophia?
Oh, sorry.
No, it's okay. Anything. Thank you all for joining.
Thank you very much, Mark.
Thank you.
Thank you, Mark.
Thanks, Mike.
Hola.